Last summer, I decided to take a weekend hiking trip to the Ozarks. I live in Kansas City, and sometimes the city just gets to be too much. I needed some fresh air and a break from the constant noise and crowds. I found a little cabin on Airbnb. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place deep in the pine forest, about a 20-minute drive from the nearest town. The drive took about 3 hours. The owner had left the key under a flower pot as promised. Inside, everything was simple but comfortable. A small living area with a stone fireplace, a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a bedroom with a queen-sized bed. I unpacked my car, bringing in my backpack, groceries, and hiking gear. I had planned to do some stargazing that night, so I set up my camera and tripod near the back deck. The cabin sat in a small clearing, providing a perfect view of the night sky, unobstructed by light pollution. After making myself a quick dinner, I went outside to take some photos. The night was clear and moonless, with the Milky Way clearly visible overhead. I was out there for about 2 hours, completely absorbed in my photography. The forest around me was mostly silent, with just the occasional distant hoot of an owl or rustle of leaves. Around 11:45, I decided to call it a night. I was exhausted from the drive and the fresh air had made me drowsy. I brought my camera equipment inside, locked the doors, and got ready for bed. The bedroom was cozy, with a handmade quilt on the bed and small bedside lamps casting a warm glow. I must have fallen asleep almost immediately, but something woke me in the middle of the night. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. The cabin was silent, the forest outside even more so. Then I heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from somewhere outside the bedroom window. Regular and deliberate, like a finger against glass. My first thought was that it must be a tree branch hitting the window, but there was no wind that night. Everything outside had been perfectly still. I lay there listening, hoping it would stop. But the tapping continued, steady and rhythmic. I reached for my phone to check the time. It was 3:17 a.m. Far too early to be up, but there was no way I could go back to sleep with that sound. I got out of bed, careful to stay away from the window, and slowly made my way to the bedroom door. The tapping stopped as soon as I moved. I stood frozen, waiting to see if it would start again. Nothing. Maybe I had imagined it? I took a deep breath and went to the living room. The cabin was dark except for the dim glow of the embers still burning in the fireplace. I added another log, grateful for the light and warmth. As I sat on the couch, trying to convince myself it was nothing, I noticed that the back door, the one leading to the deck where I'd been taking photos, was slightly ajar. I was certain I had locked it before going to bed. I had checked all the doors twice, a habit from living in the city. A cold feeling washed over me. I got up quickly and pushed the door shut, turning the deadbolt with trembling hands. That's when I saw it through the window beside the door, a shadow moving at the edge of the clearing, just where the forest began. It was definitely a human. For a moment, he or she seemed to pause, as if aware they were being watched. Then they stepped behind a large pine tree and disappeared from view. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the cops, but there was no signal. The cabin was too remote. I remembered seeing an old landline phone in the kitchen, but when I tried it, the line was dead. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, a kitchen knife on the table in front of me, just in case. The fire slowly died down, leaving the cabin in near darkness, but I was too afraid to get up and add more wood. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle outside sent a fresh wave of fear through me. As dawn finally broke, thin rays of sunlight began filtering through the windows. I waited until the forest was fully illuminated before putting the knife away and approaching the windows. The clearing outside was empty, peaceful even, with morning dew glistening on the grass. I packed my things quickly, not bothering with breakfast or even coffee. As I was loading my car, I decided to check around the cabin, looking for any signs of what I'd seen or heard during the night. At first, I found nothing, but as I rounded the corner to the back of the cabin, I stopped short. There, in the soft dirt beneath my bedroom window, were footprints. Human footprints. They circled the entire cabin, stopping at each window, before leading back into the forest. I left immediately, driving well above the speed limit until I reached the main highway. I contacted the cabin owner later that day, asking if anyone else had access to the property. The owner seemed confused by my question, explaining that the cabin was quite isolated and that they rarely had unexpected visitors. I never told them what happened. I never went back to the Ozarks either. I was 22 when this happened, still in college and perpetually broke. I'd been visiting my sister in New Orleans over spring break, but I had to get back to campus for a Monday morning exam. With money tight, I'd opted for the cheapest bus ticket possible, an overnight Greyhound leaving at 11 p.m. Sunday and arriving just in time for my 8 a.m. test. My sister lived in a small apartment near the French Quarter. The bus station was about 3 miles away, and to save the Uber fare, I decided to walk. It was a warm spring night, and I had only my backpack. I'd made the walk several times before during daylight hours, so I wasn't particularly concerned. Around 10:15 p.m., I set out, using Google Maps to guide me. About halfway to the station, the app suggested a shortcut that would save me 10 minutes. It directed me down a poorly lit side street that eventually led to a narrow pathway cutting through what looked like a small marshy area with tall reeds and grasses on either side. I hesitated at the entrance to this path. The streetlights didn't extend there, and it was significantly darker than the streets I'd been walking on. But I could see the well-lit road on the other side, maybe a quarter-mile through. With my phone's flashlight and the urgent need to catch my bus, I decided to take the shortcut. The path was muddy in spots, forcing me to step carefully. The marsh grasses rose about 7 feet high on both sides, creating a corridor that felt increasingly claustrophobic the further I walked. The sounds of the city faded quickly, replaced by the chirping of insects and the occasional splash from somewhere in the water. From using my phone's flashlight, the battery dropped from 30% to 5% within a few minutes. My power bank was buried deep in my backpack, and I couldn't stop here to dig for it. I needed to conserve what battery remained for the rest of my journey to the station, so I reluctantly turned off my flashlight. The darkness that enveloped me was scary. I stood still for a moment, allowing my eyes to adjust. The path ahead was barely visible. I continued forward slowly, placing each step with deliberate care. After about a minute into the darkness, I heard a soft splashing sound from my right, deeper in the marsh. I paused, listening intently. It could have been anything. A bird, a frog, even a small alligator. This was Louisiana after all. But something about the rhythm of it felt wrong. It sounded like footsteps, slow, measured, parallel to my own path. I quickened my pace slightly, trying to move quietly. The splashing stopped. I stopped too, heart pounding in my chest. Complete silence followed, not even the insects making a sound anymore. Then the splashing resumed, closer this time, and moving faster. I abandoned all pretense of stealth and began to walk as quickly as I could without running, afraid that if I ran, I might slip in the mud and fall. The splashing sounds matched my pace exactly, now moving quickly through the marsh just a few feet to my right. Whatever it was keeping up with me, hidden by the wall of reeds. My imagination filled in terrible possibilities. An alligator, or a deranged person, someone with harmful intentions. I broke into a run, no longer caring about the risk of falling. The slapping of my shoes against the muddy path was loud in my ears, but not loud enough to mask the sounds of whoever was rushing through the water next to me. About 50 yards from the end of the path, I heard a loud splash and what sounded like someone pulling themselves from the water onto the path behind me. I didn't look back. I just ran. I finally made it to the end of the path. I burst onto the illuminated street beyond, gasping for breath. Only then did I turn around. But I saw nothing. The path stretched back into blackness, quiet and still. I checked the time, 10:40 p.m. I still had time to reach the station, but there was no way I was continuing on foot. I called an Uber with my remaining battery and waited under the nearest streetlight, watching the path entrance the entire time. When my Uber arrived, I practically jumped into the back seat. The driver noticed my state and asked if I was okay. I must have looked terrified. I could feel myself shaking. I managed to explain that I'd taken a shortcut through the marsh. He gave me a concerned look in the rearview mirror and told me that most locals avoid that path, especially after sunset. He explained that the area had a bad reputation. A few years back, a local gang had used it as a meeting spot for drug deals. The police had cracked down, but people still reported homeless individuals who'd set up camp deeper in the marsh, or people looking to rob anyone foolish enough to walk through alone at night. I made it to my bus with minutes to spare. As we pulled away from New Orleans, I searched online for information about that marsh. Over the past decade, 3 people had gone missing in that exact area. The most recent disappearance had been just 2 months earlier. A college student, walking alone at night, who never made it to his destination. Police reports suggested robbery as the motive, but no suspects had ever been arrested. I've never told my sister about that night.